She said this is a chance as Tiffany Hayes. She's had a hot hand as of late.
Top 4 spot is because Hayes could fill in when
The gymnasium lights threw long, amber-tinted shadows across the polished hardwood floor as Caitlin Clark knelt down with a basketball balanced lightly in her hands, lowering herself to the eye level of a shy 7-year-old girl whose dark, watchful eyes carried a gravity far beyond her years. And in that quiet pocket of the arena, amid the echoing bounce of balls and the distant hum of voices, Caitlin sensed that something deeply human was unfolding, because the child, Amara, was pointing urgently towards the hoop, speaking rapidly in Arabic, her small hands moving with an intensity that betrayed both excitement and desperation. And although Caitlin smiled gently and nodded in encouragement, her heart tightened with frustration at her own inability to understand. For around them, the Caitlin Clark Foundation's annual International Youth Sports Day was in full motion, with children from 12 different countries filling the space, their laughter and chatter weaving together a mosaic of languages that felt both joyful and aching. A reminder of how sport can unite yet language can still divide, and no one watching could have guessed that this fleeting moment of miscommunication was about to unlock a story of sacrifice, buried brilliance and quiet dignity that would leave everyone present changed. Amara, who had arrived with her refugee family from Syria, clutched a worn, scuffed basketball as though it were a treasure salvaged from another life, repeating the same phrase again and again as tears began to gather, not because she was angry, but because she wanted so badly to be understood, to tell the woman she idolized how basketball had carried her through nights of fear in a refugee camp where she practiced shooting into a rusted bucket, imagining the cracked plastic rim was an arena and that she was Caitlin Clark herself, and as Caitlin struggled to bridge that gap with nothing but gestures and warmth, a soft voice emerged behind them, almost swallowed by the noise, gently translating that Amara was saying basketball had saved her life, that Caitlin's name had been spoken like a prayer in a place where hope was scarce. And when Caitlin turned, she saw an elderly woman in a plain gray cleaning uniform, a mop resting in hands shaped by decades of labor, her silver hair pulled back neatly. Yet there was something arresting about her posture, an unspoken authority and intelligence that felt strangely out of place, like discovering a masterpiece tucked behind a janitor's closet door. And when Caitlin asked, visibly surprised, whether she spoke Arabic, the woman smiled with quiet warmth and answered fluently, kneeling to speak to Amara, who immediately brightened, her words spilling out with relief and joy at finally being heard. And before Caitlin could fully process that moment, the woman stood and addressed a confused boy lingering near the three-point line in smooth, melodic French, then effortlessly shifted into Spanish for a small group from Guatemala, Japanese for twin sisters hovering nervously together, and Russian for a teenage boy sitting alone on the bleachers, watching the world from a careful distance. And as children gathered closer, drawn by the miracle of recognition in their own languages, Caitlin felt a profound stillness settle inside her, the sense that the universe had placed the right person in the right place at the precise moment they were needed, transforming what had seemed like a simple language barrier into a doorway revealing hidden lives and forgotten dreams. And when Caitlin finally asked how she knew so many languages, admiration thick in her voice, the woman's smile faltered just enough to reveal a shadow of old disappointments before she replied with simple honesty that she used to teach them, that once, long ago, she had been Dr. Elena Rodriguez, holder of a PhD in applied linguistics from Stanford University, fluent in 9 languages, a revelation that seemed to recalibrate the room itself, as Caitlin realized she had unconsciously dismissed one of the most educated people in the building because of a uniform, and Elena went on to explain that she had come to America 15 years earlier from Mexico with her husband and young daughter, having been head of a foreign languages department at a national university, publishing research on multilingual child development and advising international organizations on language education policy, only to discover that none of her credentials were recognized, that the process of validation would take years and money they did not have, and what began as a temporary cleaning job to pay bills became a long-term necessity when her husband suffered a serious construction injury that buried them under medical costs, forcing Elena to choose survival over status, dignity over pride. And as Caitlin listened, she felt her understanding of greatness shift, recognizing that true excellence often lives quietly, stripped of applause, and that while arenas celebrate talent under bright lights, some of the most extraordinary people move through the world unseen, carrying their brilliance humbly while offering it wherever it is needed. And in that moment, Caitlin understood that leadership is not only about scoring points or inspiring crowds, but about seeing, truly seeing, the humanity and worth in every person, because that evening was no longer just about basketball or charity or even language, but about the quiet resilience of those who rebuild their lives without recognition, about children finding hope in sport, and about the profound power of connection when someone takes the time to listen. And long after the gym emptied and the echoes faded, that encounter would remain etched in Caitlin's mind as a reminder that greatness is not always announced, that it often wears a uniform no one notices, and that sometimes the most meaningful victories happen far from the scoreboard, in moments where understanding replaces silence.
In this game, Sheldon with the three, no good. There's Brown. Nobody getting the body to move her out of there, and she's going to get an and one.
Of them 6'7", so you have
Their daughter, Elena explained, had needed intensive educational support simply to learn English and regain the academic ground she had lost. And so what was meant to be a temporary cleaning job gradually became permanent as the demands of family survival inevitably took precedence over personal ambition. And for 15 years she mopped floors, polished windows, and moved quietly through the arena long after the crowds had gone, listening to fragments of conversation in dozens of languages, spoken by visiting teams and international guests, translating them silently in her mind to keep her skills alive, clinging to the hope that one day there might be a chance to use them openly again. And it was in that moment that Caitlin realized she was not merely standing beside someone who could resolve a language difficulty, but someone whose hidden abilities embodied precisely the kind of educational resource her foundation had been searching for to expand its international outreach. As the gym gradually hushed and word spread among volunteers that something remarkable was unfolding near center court, children clustering around Elena with animated relief as they finally spoke freely in their own tongues to an adult who understood not just their words but the cultural meaning behind them. And watching this natural teacher in action, Caitlin's thoughts raced beyond the confines of that evening towards possibilities that felt both urgent and necessary, prompting her to ask Elena if she would be willing to talk the following day about ways the foundation might help her use her talents properly. A question that brought tears to Elena's eyes as she replied with practiced humility that she was just a cleaner now and had learned not to dream too boldly, only for Caitlin to answer firmly that she was exactly what the Foundation's education program had been missing. Someone who could help them truly serve immigrant families and children navigating sport and schooling in a language not their own. And the next morning Elena arrived at the Foundation offices wearing her best dress, hands trembling slightly as she entered a conference room where Caitlin and board members sat beside printouts of her long-forgotten research, her dissertation on multilingual education, and a detailed proposal Caitlin had spent the night developing. And as Caitlin offered her the position of Director of International Education Outreach, outlining responsibilities that included developing multilingual sports curricula, training staff to work sensitively with non-English speaking families, and building inclusive programs that honored linguistic diversity, Elena sat in stunned silence, reading her own academic achievements as though they belonged to a former life. And when Caitlin added that the salary would reflect her qualifications, that the foundation would support the formal validation of her credentials and establish scholarships for immigrant children facing language barriers, Elena's composure finally gave way as years of deferred dreams surged back to life, whispering that she had never imagined anyone would see her as more than someone who cleaned floors. A moment that represented not merely a career change, but the restoration of dignity to someone whose worth had never diminished, only gone unrecognized. And 6 months later, the Foundation's new Multilingual Education Center buzzed with energy as Dr. Elena Rodriguez once again supervised educators working with families from more than 20 countries, offering sports instruction in native languages, guidance through the American education system, and translation